The void around the Deep Space Monitoring Station Kuan Yin was not truly silent. It hummed with a constant low-grade symphony of radiation and distant stellar winds, all of which were filtered, analyzed, and catalogued by the station's sensitive arrays. Officer Kim Soo sat at her console, her eyes moving across streams of data. It was a quiet shift, the kind that made the vastness of space feel both immense and strangely dull. The Kuan Yin was humanity's ear, pressed to the galactic door, a research and listening post on the very edge of explored space. Humanity was the new member of the Galactic Concord, a club of ancient and often delicate civilizations. They were known, but not fully understood. Their technology was robust, sometimes inelegant, but it worked under conditions that made other species' gear fail. They came from a world classed in quiet Concord circles as a death world. It was a label they accepted with a sort of grim pride. Kim Soo sipped her tea, a bitter green blend from a mountain on Earth. She was checking the calibration on a long-range neutrino detector when a sharp, priority tone pierced the quiet of the operations center. A red bracket flashed on her main screen, highlighting a signal fighting its way through the static of a nearby nebula. It was a Concord standard distress pulse, but the modulation was wrong. It wasn't human. She opened the channel. The video feed that resolved was grainy, breaking up, but the message was horrifyingly clear. The being on the screen had large, luminous eyes the color of violets, set in a smooth, gray-skinned face. Its voice was melodic, but thick with panic. Behind it, the elegant, organic curves of a wall were scorched black. The sounds were unmistakable. The high-pitched shriek of energy weapons, deeper concussive booms, and alien cries of fear and pain to any Concord signatory. This is Ambassador Tev of the Vel hegemony. Our colony on Paxson 3 is under assault by the Cathari marauders. They ignore surrender protocols. They are breaking our biodomes. They are harvesting us. We request immediate mercy and aid under Article 7 of the Mutual Protection. A blast of green light flashed from off-screen, and the image shuddered. Tev flinched, their large eyes wide with a terror that was universal. Please, anyone. Mercy. The transmission dissolved into a wash of static and a final, truncated scream. The silence that followed in the operations center was heavy. Kim Soo's hands flew over her console, locking the signal, triangulating its point of origin, pulling up every database entry on the Vial and the Cathari. Her heart was a drum in her chest. The Val were pacifists, master biologists and artists. The Cathari were scavengers, slavers, a blight on the fringe. Technologically advanced, cruel, and considered a contained threat by the Concord, who usually responded with stern diplomatic missives, and after much debate. Perhaps a patrol ship. The door to the ops center slid open, and Commander Lee Jun entered. He was a man in his late 40s, his face lined more from concentration than age. He had been reviewing geological scans from a nearby asteroid belt. He took in Kim Soo's pale face and the frozen, desperate image of Ambassador Tev on the main screen. Report, Officer Kim. Sir, Priority 1 distress call, Origin Paxson 3 in the Gara sector. Val colony under full-scale attack by Cathari marauders. The Ambassador. They're begging for mercy. The Cathari are ignoring all protocols. She brought up the tactical overlay. The nearest Concord peacekeeping vessel is the Luminous Resolve. Its scheduled patrol puts it in response range in 7 standard days. Lee Jun walked to the screen, his eyes fixed on the terrified face of Tev. He replayed the last few seconds. Harvesting us. The word hung in the air, cold and ugly. He knew the Concord procedures. A distress call from a non-member species, especially in a disputed sector, would trigger committees. Subcommittees would debate jurisdictional boundaries and proportional response. By the time a consensus was reached and a ship arrived, Paxson 3 would be a silent tomb. The Vel would be cargo in a Cathari hold. What are our assets? Lee asked, his voice quiet. Just us, sir. Kuan Yin is a Class 3 research and monitoring vessel. We have enhanced engines for system hopping, a basic medical bay, and the standard defensive suite. Sergeant Park Day and his 5-person Marine security team are aboard. Scout Shuttle Sting is in the bay, prepped for surface survey. Lee nodded slowly. The Kuan Yin was not a warship, but it was human-built. Its hull was thicker than spec required. Its power systems had redundant backups upon backups, and its defensive suite included a mass driver for taking core samples from asteroids. In the terms of the Concorde engineers who had inspected it, the ship was over-engineered. In human terms, it was built to survive. He made his decision. There was no time for the paralysis of bureaucracy. He moved to the command console and opened a direct channel to Central Command on Earth. A transmission that would take hours to reach. This is Commander Lee Jun of the Deep Space Monitor Kuan Yin. We have intercepted a verified distress call from the Vel Hegemony colony on Paxson. 3. The colony is subject to an active, catastrophic attack by Cathari marauders, with clear intent of mass slaughter and enslavement. Concorde response is estimated at 7 days. Civilian extinction is imminent. He took a breath, the words of an old, rarely discussed treaty clause coming to mind. It had been written into humanity's accession documents, a footnote most diplomats ignored. It was a simple, blunt statement of principle. Therefore, Lee continued, his voice firm, under the provisions of the Deathworlder prerogative, specifically Clause 7, pertaining to the prevention of imminent speciescide. I am taking Kuan Yin to render immediate assistance. We are moving to intercept. Kuan Yin out. He closed the channel. Officer Kim Soo looked at him. Clause 7, sir? That's the if you see a house on fire, you kick the door in clause, Lee finished. It means we don't need to wait for permission when the problem is this clear and the clock is this short. He turned to her. Plot a maximum burn course for the Paxson system. I want us there in 48 hours. Wake Sergeant Park and have him meet me in the briefing room. And tell Choi Yoon to have the Sting ready for a hot, silent drop. As Kim Soo worked, the Kuan Yin began to thrum with a new purpose. The gentle hum of the station became the deeper vibration of the main engines powering up. On the view screen, the static field of stars seemed to sharpen. They were no longer observers, cataloging the universe's noise. They were plunging headlong into a single desperate cry within it. Lee Jun stood watching the screen, the final image of Ambassador Tev's plea still etched in his mind. The Concorde would see a complex political and military dilemma. Lee saw a simpler, more terrible equation. People were dying right now, screaming for a mercy that was not coming. The galaxy's answer was a promise of future debate. His people's answer, forged on a violent world where hesitation meant extinction, was always movement, always action. The Kuan Yin turned, a lone, blunt instrument pointing towards the darkness, where a small light was about to be snuffed out. They were going to answer the call. They just wouldn't be bringing the answer the galaxy expected. The alert klaxon was a short, sharp pulse, not the blaring alarm used for immediate combat. It was a call to readiness. Throughout the Kuan Yin, a handful of crew members not already on duty moved with a quiet urgency. The ship was now committed, hurtling through the void towards. The Paxson system at a speed its designers would have called stressful and its human crew called necessary. In the small functional gym that doubled as an armory, Sergeant Park Day heard the pulse through his earpiece. He was in the middle of a set of pull-ups, his muscles coiling and releasing with a steady rhythm. He dropped to the deck, not breathing hard. He was a compact man, built like a stone, with a face that was calm and unreadable. He tapped his earpiece. "Sergeant Park, acknowledge, on my way." He walked to the reinforced locker at the back of the room. A palm scan and a heavy clunk released the door. Inside, standing on racks like silent guardians, were 6 suits of Mark IV Bastion power armor. They were not sleek. They were angular slabs of composite plating, stress points reinforced with bands of dull gray metal. They looked less like advanced exoskeletons and more like mobile fortresses. Park ran a hand over the shoulder plate of the nearest suit. It was scratched and scored from drills and a long-ago encounter with micrometeoroid debris. This was his. He began the pre-check with the methodical care of a ritual. He tested the servos in the limbs, the seal of the helmet ring, the pressure in the hydraulic lines. He powered up the suit's basic systems, and a low hum filled the small room as the armor came to life, a green ready status glowing on the chest plate display. One by one, his 5 Marines entered. There was no talk, only nods. They each went to their own suit and began the same silent checks. The youngest, Private Kong, glanced at the heavier weapons locker. "Sarge, what's the op?" The briefing said Cathari. "Personal energy shields, plasma casters. Our rifles might just make their shields pretty." Park didn't look up from checking the power cell on a compact shotgun. "Private, what do you do when a door is locked and you don't have the key?" Kong blinked. "You find another way in?" "You break the door down," Park said, his voice flat. He slung the shotgun onto his suit's magnetic clamp. "Or you go through the wall. Or you crawl through the vents. Their shields are for energy. They expect an energy fight." He picked up his primary weapon, a heavy caliber rifle that fired solid armor-piercing slugs. "We don't fight fair. We fight to win. They're here for a soft, easy harvest." He finally looked at his squad, his dark eyes steady. "We are here to give them a very hard day." In the main shuttle bay, the air was cold and smelled of ozone and metal. The Sting sat in the center of the bay, a black, angular craft that looked like a malignant insect. It was the ship's lone scout shuttle, but like everything else on the Kuan Yin, it had been modified. Its sensor profile was incredibly small. Its engine baffles could mute its thrust to near silence for short bursts. Its hull was coated in a material that drank radar and lidar pulses. Choi Yoon was underneath the craft, on a rolling crawler. A diagnostic tablet was in one hand, a multi-tool in the other. Her black hair was tied back in a severe bun, and her coveralls were stained with lubricant. She was talking to the shuttle's AI, her voice a low murmur. "Run the counter-surveillance suite again. Full spectrum from thermal to gravity pulse. I need to know if a moth farts within 5 clicks of you." A soft, genderless voice replied from a speaker above her. "Diagnostic complete. All stealth systems operational at 98% efficiency. The passive sensor mesh has a 0.03% degradation on the starboard wing." "Good enough," Choi muttered. She slid out from under the shuttle and stood up, wiping her hands. She looked at the Sting, not with affection, but with the deep understanding of a master for her tool. This wasn't a ship for glory. It was a ship for getting in, getting the data, and getting out without being seen. Now, Commander Lee wanted her to drop a squad of heavily armed Marines into the middle of a war zone without being spotted. She felt a thrill that was equal parts fear and focus. This was what the Sting was built for. She climbed the short ladder into the cockpit. The space was tight, every surface covered in screens and controls. She began the pre-flight sequence, her fingers dancing over the panels with unconscious skill. Fuel cells charged. Navigation computer fed the course to Paxson 3. Weapon systems online. The Sting had 2 small retractable cannons It fired kinetic penetrators, not for dogfights. For creating new doors in enemy hulls. Her console chimed. It was Commander Lee. Choi, status? Sting is green, Commander. She's quiet and she's hungry. I can get your team down there. But once the party starts, the Caithari will know someone crashed it. Understood. Just get them to the doorstep. Park will handle the rest. The briefing room was small, with a table that showed a holographic projection of Paxson 3. The planet was a pale blue and green marble. The Val colony was a cluster of interconnected, shimmering biodomes near the equator. The Caithari cruiser hung in low orbit above it, like a predatory bird. Lee Jun stood at the head of the table. Kim Soo, Park Dae, and Choi Yun were with him. The atmosphere was tense but clear. Intel is from the distress call and our databases, Lee began, pointing to the hologram. Paxson 3. Thin atmosphere, 0.6 standard gravity. The Val need their biodomes to survive. The Caithari are cracking them open, venting the air, and picking up the survivors. It's efficient and cruel. Kim Soo zoomed in on the colony schematics they had pulled from the public Concord records. The main dome is gone. Secondary domes are breached here and here. Life signs are fading in those sectors. The central hub dome appears to be the last stand. That's likely where Ambassador Tev was. Park Bay studied the layout. Tunnels. Service conduits. They're small for Vel maintenance. My team in armor will have to crouch. But it's away in behind their lines. Exactly, Lee said. Choi will drop you here, at this abandoned mining outpost 2 kilometers from the main colony complex. It's in a deep radar shadow from the cruiser. From there, you move through these underground conduits and emerge inside the colony's perimeter. Your job is not to take on the entire Caithari force. Your job is to find survivors, cause chaos, break their harvesting rhythm. Draw their attention to the ground. He turned to Choi Yun. Your primary mission is insertion. After that, go dark. But if you see an opportunity to disrupt from the air, a convoy, a command group, you have discretion. Choi nodded, her mind already racing through flight paths and escape vectors. Kim Soo looked at the readout of the Caithari cruiser. Sir, that ship, it outguns us. By a lot. Concord records show its shields can deflect standard particle beams. Our point defense lasers won't even scratch it. A faint, hard smile touched Lee's lips. We're not going to fight it the way it expects. Officer Kim, you and I will handle the cruiser. The Kuan Yin has one weapon they won't be prepared for. He changed the display to show their own ship, the mass driver. It's not an energy weapon. It's a kinetic weapon. We fire a 1-ton slug of tungsten at a fraction of light speed. But their shields are designed for energy dispersion, Kim said, understanding dawning. A kinetic impact of that mass, at that velocity. It's like hitting a wall with a starship. It's a can opener, Lee corrected. We won't aim for their shielded hull. We'll aim for a structural weak point, the connection between their primary power core and their weapon arrays. It's less armored. We cripple them, not destroy them. And if they shoot first? Park asked quietly. Lee met his gaze. Then we use the countermeasure pods. We flood local space with chaff and thermally charged particulate. It's primitive. It's dirty. It blinds their targeting and diffuses their energy beams. They are expecting a clean technological duel. We are going to throw sand in their eyes and then hit them with a rock. There was a moment of silence as the plan settled over them. It was brutal, simple, and utterly human. It ignored the conventions of space combat that the Concord took for granted. Any questions? Lee asked. There were none. Then to your stations. We reach the Paxson system in 18 hours. Be ready. The hologram winked out, leaving them in the plain white light of the briefing room. They dispersed, each carrying a piece. Of the plan, a plan that relied not on superior technology, but on unpredictability, resilience, and the willingness to do what the civilized galaxy would not. The Kuan Yin sped on, a small, tough ship carrying a very hard answer towards a cry for soft mercy. The Kuan Yin slid out of its faster-than-light jump with a shudder that ran through the deck plates. The star of the Paxson system burned cold and white on the view screen. The planet itself hung in the black, a serene-looking sphere of blue and green. It looked peaceful from here. On the bridge, the illusion shattered instantly. Kim Su's console lit up with urgent readings. Confirmed Cathari energy signatures in low orbit. One cruiser. Designator matches known. Marauder vessel Ravager's Claw. Its holding station directly over the main colony complex. She pulled up a magnified image. The cruiser was a jagged, asymmetrical thing, like a piece of broken blade. Its hull glowed with menacing purple energy along its spine. Its main battery is charged and oriented towards the planet. It's not bombarding. It's covering. Covering the harvest, Li Jun said, his voice grim. On the planet's surface, thermal scans showed the bright, painful blooms of fires within the shattered biodomes. Life sign scanners painted a desperate, fading picture. Clusters of biosigns were shrinking, being swallowed by the colder, more aggressive signatures of the Cathari ground forces. Time? Choi is standing by in the Sting, Kim reported. Sergeant Park's squad is loaded and locked. They are ready for drop. Lee took his seat in the command chair. The plan was in motion, and now every second was a veil life. Kim, plot us an approach vector. Use the magnetic pole of the planet for cover. I want us close, but not threatening. Yet, open a channel to the Sting. Channel open. Choi, you are clear for launch. Get them down safe. And remember, once you're off my deck, you are ghosts. Do not be seen. From the shuttle bay, Choi Yoon's voice came back, tight with focus. Understood, Commander. Launching now. See you at the party. On the main screen, a small, dark shape detached from the belly of the Kuan Yin. The Sting fell away, its engines dark. For a long moment, it was just a piece of debris tumbling towards the planet's northern hemisphere. Then, at the last possible second, tiny maneuvering jets fired, adjusting its angle. It pierced the upper atmosphere, a silent, black dart aimed at the planet's night side. Inside the Sting, the ride was rough. The shuttle vibrated violently as it bit into the thin atmosphere. Choi Yoon's hands were steady on the controls, her eyes glued to her displays. She was flying on instruments, her cockpit windows showing only the orange glow of re-entry plasma. She had one goal, the abandoned mining outpost, a blotch of gray in the rocky foothills, 2 kilometers from the glowing, wounded jewel of the vile colony. Crossing the Terminator now, she muttered. The shaking ceased as she hit the cooler, dark side of the planet. She killed all active systems, flying purely on passive sensors and the inertial guidance system. Below, the landscape was a blur of dark rock and deep shadows. The colony ahead was a scar of light and heat. She could see the Cathari dropships, like metal beetles, crawling between the domes. 30 seconds, she said over the internal comm to the passenger bay. Brace for a hard set down. It won't be pretty. In the back, strapped into their power armor, Park Day and his 5 Marines felt the shuttle bank sharply. They were weightless for a second, then slammed back into their seats as retro thrusters fired. The Sting came down in a cloud of dust and shattered rock within the broken walls of the mining outpost. The landing gear groaned but held. The rear ramp hissed down. The world outside was eerily silent, the thin air carrying little sound. The sky was a dark purple, strewn with unfamiliar stars. The only light came from the distant, burning colony. Go, go, go. Park's voice was a gravelly command in their helmet comms. The 6 armored figures moved out, their forms bulky and alien in the low gravity. They bounded more than walked, covering ground in long, loping strides towards the gaping maw of a maintenance tunnel entrance. Choi's scans had identified Dot as the last Marine vanished into the dark hole. The Sting's engines whined to life again. Choi lifted off, skimming the ground, and slipped into the deep shadow of a canyon, vanishing from sight and sensor. The tunnel was cramped and dark. The Marines moved in single file, the lights on their helmets cutting beams through the dust they kicked up. The air was stale and cold. They followed the map on their helmet displays, a path Kim Soo had uploaded from the colony schematics. After 20 minutes of silent, hunched movement, Park raised a fist. The squad froze. Ahead was a heavy maintenance hatch, sealed. On the other side, according to the map, was a sublevel of the central hub dome. Park moved forward and placed a small scanner against the hatch. The readout on his visor showed life signs many, clustered together, pulsing with the rapid rhythm of fear, and other signs, colder, moving in predatory patterns. Vile are on the other side. So are Cathari. At least 4. He looked back at his squad, his face illuminated by the glow of his display inside the helmet. Standard breach. Fast, hard, and confusing. Kong, you blow the hatch. The rest, you know the drill. We are the surprise. Let's make it a bad one. Private Kong fixed a small-shaped charge to the hatch's locking mechanism. The squad flattened against the tunnel walls. A flash, a muffled thump, and the hatch blew inward with a shriek of tearing metal. The scene beyond was a vision from a nightmare. They were in a wide circular chamber that must have been a garden or a meeting place. Now it was a ruin. Beautiful, crystalline structures were shattered. Alien plants were trampled and burning. A group of about 30 Vel were huddled against the far wall, their large eyes wide with a terror that deepened as the humans burst in. Between the Marines and the Vel were 4 Cathari warriors. They were tall, over 7 feet, with long limbs covered in chitinous black armor that seemed to absorb the light. They had multiple red, faceted eyes. They held long, rifle-like weapons that glowed with a sickly green energy at the tips. One of them turned at the noise, its head tilting in what seemed like confusion. It saw the 6 hulking, angular shapes in the doorway. It did not see polished Concord combat suits. It saw something unfamiliar and blunt. It raised its weapon. Park didn't give the order to fire. He simply fired himself. His heavy rifle barked, a sharp, shocking sound in the enclosed space. The tungsten slug hit the Cathari warrior in the center of its torso. A shimmering purple barrier flared to life, inches from its armor, the personal shield. The shield flashed, strained, and then shattered like glass under a hammer. The slug continued, punching through the chitin with a wet crunch. The Cathari staggered back, looked down at the hole in its chest, and collapsed. The other 3 Cathari reacted. They fired. Bolts of green plasma streaked across the room. One hit Marine Choi's shoulder plate. The plasma splashed, scorching the armor black and sending molten droplets flying. Alarm icons flashed on Choi's display, but the armor held. The suit's external temperature spiked, then began to cool. Inside, Choi grunted from the transfer of kinetic energy, but she was unhurt. She returned fire. The room became a chaos of noise and light. The humans used the broken terrain, moving with surprising speed in the low gravity, leaping over fallen crystal spires. They did not stand and trade shots. They flanked. Private Kang used a grenade launcher, firing not at a warrior, but at the floor near the feet of 2 Cathari. The explosion wasn't plasma. It was concussive force and shrapnel. It knocked them off their feet, their shields flickering from the multiple impacts. Before they could rise, the Marines were on them, not with rifles, but with combat knives and armored fists. One Cathari warrior found itself grappled by Park Day. It was stronger, but Park's armor multiplied his strength. He drove a knee into its midsection, feeling the chitin crack. The warrior tried to bring its plasma caster around, but Park grabbed the weapon's barrel, with one hand his armor glove sizzling, and wrenched it aside. With his other hand, he drew the hatchet from his back mount and buried it in the joint between the warrior's head and shoulder. The creature went limp. The fight was over in less than a minute. 4 Cathari lay dead. The Marines stood amidst the wreckage, their armor scarred and smoking. The only sounds were the hum of their power units, the crackle of small fires, and the soft, weeping sounds of the vile Park turned towards the huddled aliens. He retracted his helmet. His human face, sweaty and stern, was now visible. He held up a hand, palm out, a universal gesture he hoped they understood. "Ambassador Tev," he said, his voice rough but trying to be calm. "We are here to help. We are from the ship that heard your call." From the middle of the group, a veil stood. It was Tev, their graceful robes torn and stained. Their large violet eyes looked from the dead Cathari to the fearsome, scarred humans, and then to Park's face. The confusion and terror in those eyes were slowly joined by a dawning, incomprehensible hope. You came," Tev whispered, their voice like wind chimes. "But how?" "The Concord. Their ships are days away." "We are not the Concord," Park said simply. He looked at the shattered ceiling, towards where the Cathari cruiser hung in orbit. "We are the answer that arrives first." He turned back to his squad, his face hardening again. "Now let's get these people to safety. And let's show the Cathari what happens when you ruin the party." The silence in the Vel chamber was brief, shattered by the crackle of Park's suit radio. It was Choi Yoon, her voice calm but urgent from her hidden perch in the sting. "Sergeant, they know. Your firefight lit up their scanners. Multiple Cathari signatures are converging on your position from the eastern and western access tunnels. Estimated time until you're surrounded: 4 minutes." Park Day looked at the 30 terrified Vel, then at his 5 Marines. Their armor was scarred but functional. 4 minutes. He made a decision. "Choi, can you give us a distraction? Something loud to the north? I can drop my last seismic charge on the old refinery ruins. It'll make a big bang and a lot of heat. Might pull a few their way. Do it. Then get clear." He turned to his squad. "We're not staying. We're moving. Kong, Choi, take point. We're taking these people to the secondary lifeboat bay on the southern edge of the complex. The schematics show it might still be intact." He looked at Tev. "Ambassador, tell your people to stay close to us. No matter what you see, do not run away from us. We are your shield now." Tev nodded, translating quickly in their soft, chiming language. The Val clustered closer, their large eyes fixed on the hulking human forms. The Marines formed a protective ring around the Val and began to move. A slow, armored procession through the shattered gardens and into a wide corridor. The low gravity made the Vel's steps light and skittish, while the humans moved with powerful, deliberate bounds. They had gone 100 meters when the first Cathari patrol found them. 3 warriors appeared at the far end of the corridor. They saw the fleeing Veil, the strange armored escorts, and immediately raised their weapons. The humans didn't break stride. Park and another Marine, Lee, dropped to one knee. Their rifles boomed, the solid slugs crossing the distance in an instant. One Cathari shield flared and failed, the warrior spinning from the impact. The other 2 returned plasma fire. Bolts of green energy sizzled past, melting gouges in the wall. "Keep moving." Park yelled. He fired again, not aiming to kill, but to keep the Cathari heads down. From the side, a service duct exploded outward, and 2 more Cathari leapt through. They were closer, too close for rifles. Private Kong met the first one with the stock of his shotgun, a brutal upward swing that cracked against the warrior's jaw. As it reeled, he fired point blank. The shield absorbed most of the spread, but the sheer kinetic force knocked the creature off its feet. The second Cathari fired. The plasma hit Kong in the chest plate. His suit alarm screamed, and he was thrown back into a wall, but he pushed himself up, his armor blackened and steaming. Park was there. He didn't shoot. He charged. He lowered his shoulder and crashed into the Cathari warrior like a battering ram. The warrior's shield sparked violently on impact, overloading with a sudden, massive physical force. Both of them went down in a clatter of armor. The Cathari was fast, its limbs a blur. A taloned hand scraped across Park's helmet visor, leaving deep scratches. Park got a hand around the warrior's weapon arm and pinned it. With his other hand, he drew his knife and drove it up under the rim of the creature's chest plate. It jerked once and went still. He got up, breathing hard. He looked at the vial. They were staring, frozen in a mixture of horror and awe. They had never seen violence like this, raw, physical, and final. This was not the clean zap of an energy weapon. This was crushing and breaking. Move! Park bellowed, and the procession lurched forward again. From above, a deep hump echoed through the structure, and dust drifted from the ceiling. Choi's distraction. It worked. The pressure from the east lessened. They fought their way through 2 more skirmishes. Each time the humans using the environment, their brutal strength, and their willingness to close to arm's length where Cathari energy weapons were a liability. The Marine's armor was pitted and scorched. One had a malfunctioning leg servo, limping badly. But they kept the Vel safe in the center of their moving fortress. Finally, they burst through a set of doors into a larger hangar bay. Sitting there, miraculously untouched, were 3 small Val lifeboats, sleek and organic-looking. Get them loaded. Now, Park ordered. His Marines helped the trembling Vel up the ramps and into the crafts. Tev hesitated at the foot of the last ramp, looking back at Park, whose armor was smeared with alien fluids and scored by plasma. Your ship. In orbit, the cruiser will destroy it. You will be trapped here. Park gave a grim, tired smile. Don't worry about our ship, Ambassador. Worry about getting yours to a safe distance. The commander has a plan for the cruiser. As the lifeboat seals hissed shut, Park tapped his comm. Choi, the package is away. The lifeboats are launching. Give them what cover you can. On it, Sarge, Choi's voice came back. Outside the bay, the 3 lifeboats shot out into the pale sky. From a canyon to the north, the black shape of the Sting rose, just high enough to fire a spread of chaff rockets that burst into clouds of glittering metal between the lifeboats and the yaw, direction of the Cathari ground forces. Then it dove back into cover. On the bridge of the Kuan Yin, Li Jun and Tim Su watched it all unfold. The lifeboat signals were clear on their screen, fleeing the colony. The Sting was a ghost, flickering in and out of sensor range. And the Cathari cruiser, the Ravager's Claw, was now turning its attention from the planet to the new, unexpected ship in its space. Incoming hail, Kim said. Her face tense. Put it on. The main screen filled with the image of the Cathari commander. Its face was a nightmare of sharp angles and red, compound eyes. It spoke in grating Concord standard. Human vessel. You have interfered in a lawful Cathari resource acquisition. You will stand down and prepare to be boarded. Your biomass will be added to our collection. Lee leaned forward, his expression calm. Cathari vessel. This is Commander Li Jun of the Earthship Kuan Yin. You are engaged in mass murder and enslavement. Power down your weapons, release all Vel captives, and surrender your crew for trial. The Cathari commander made a sound like grinding stones. A laugh? Trial? You are a single primitive can. We will melt you down and drink you. Your defiance is amusing, but now it ends. The screen went dark. They're powering their main battery. Kim called out. Targeting lock established. They're firing. Fire countermeasures. All pods. And give me a firing solution on their primary power relay junction, right where the spine meets the forward array. Now, Kim's fingers flew. Pods away. Solution locked. Mass driver is charged and ready. Outside, dozens of pods shot out from the Kuan Yin, exploding into vast, dense clouds of metallic chaff and superheated dust. At that same moment, the Cathari cruiser fired. A beam of brilliant purple energy, capable of cutting a continent, lanced out. It struck the cloud. The energy diffused, scattering, its power dissipated and absorbed by the billions of particles. The beam that emerged on the other side was weak and scattered, washing harmlessly over the Kuan Yin's thick hull like a light show. On the Cathari bridge, the commander stared in confusion. This was not how space combat worked. Fire, Lee said quietly. The Kuan Yin shuddered as its mass driver fired. There was no brilliant energy beam, only a deep, visceral thud that resonated through the ship. A 1-ton tungsten slug, invisible to the eye, raced across the void dot. It struck the Cathari cruiser, not on its heavily shielded belly, but on a specific, less armored coupling near its stern. The impact was not an explosion. It was a catastrophic puncture. The slug tore through decks, conduits, and power lines. A kinetic hammer blow that severed the main feed from the reactor to the ship's weapons and engines. On the Kuan Yin's screen, the purple glow along the cruiser's spine flickered wildly and died. The ship began to drift, tumbling slowly, lights blinking out across its hull. It was not destroyed. It was crippled. A predator turned into floating, helpless wreckage. The bridge was silent for a moment. Kim Soo let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Direct hit. Their power signature is down 80%. They're dead in the water. Lee Jun watched the dying ship. He felt no triumph, only a cold satisfaction. The Cathari had expected a duel of lasers. They had been given a stone from a sling. He opened a channel to the cruiser. Cathari vessel Ravager's Claw. This is Commander. Lee, you have lost power and motive force. Your harvest is over. Surrender your crew, and we will provide medical aid. Continue to resist, and we will board you. The choice is yours. He closed the channel. The mercy he had offered the Cathari was the same he had brought to the Vile, a chance to stop the violence. They had refused the first offer. He waited to see if they would refuse the last one. Below, on the planet, the 3 Veil lifeboats soared safely into the clear, dark sky. The silence after the battle was louder than the fight. On the surface of Paxson 3, the crackle of fires and the moan of the thin wind through shattered domes were the only sounds. Sergeant Park Day and his Marines moved through the ruins, no longer as a fighting unit, but as a search and rescue team. Their armored forms, which had been instruments of violence, now lifted fallen crystal spars to free, trapped Val, carried the injured gently, and handed out ration packs and water from their survival kits. Ambassador Tev stayed close to Park, acting as a translator and a familiar, calming face for their people. They watched as a human Marine, the one called Kung with the limping leg servo, carefully set a splint on a Val child's broken limb using a piece of armor plating and a bandage. The child stared up, not in fear, but in a kind of stunned curiosity. You are different than the stories, Tev said softly to Park, who was scanning a collapsed section for life signs. Park retracted his helmet. His face was tired, streaked with grime. What stories? The Concord. They speak of humans as loud, unsubtle, primitives with powerful engines. They call your world a death world, a place of nightmares. They say you are survivors, but they say it like it is a flaw. Tev's large eyes watched Kang give the child a piece of human chocolate. The child sniffed it, then took a small bite, its eyes going wide. They do not speak of this, of stopping to help, of sharing your food. Park grunted. On our world, surviving a storm or a predator doesn't mean you walk past the next person caught in it. It means you know how bad it is, so you help. He pointed his scanner at a new spot. Surviving isn't a flaw. It's a lesson. The first lesson is that nobody survives alone. Overhead, the sky was no longer dominated by the menacing shape of the Cathari cruiser. The Ravager's claw hung dark and silent, a prisoner. The Kuan Yin floated nearby, a steady, vigilant sentinel. Small shuttles, both human and captured Cathari, ferried surrendered crew members to holding areas on the Kuan Yin and brought down medical supplies in orbit. Commander Li Jun stood on the bridge, watching the final surrender proceedings. The Cathari commander, stripped of its weapons and its pride, had been brought aboard. It stood before Li, held by 2 Marines in light armor. It was still defiant, its red eyes glowing with hatred. You fought without honor, the Cathari commander rasped. You hid in dust. You struck at a weakness. This is not how warriors fight. Li looked at the creature, his expression unreadable. We are not warriors. We are responders. You are not a worthy opponent to duel. You were a problem to solve. The problem was you hurting the helpless. The solution was to make you stop. He leaned forward slightly. Honor is for those who can afford it. The Val asked for mercy. You gave them none. So you got a different kind of answer. He nodded to the Marines. Take it to the brig. Treat its injuries. They will all face justice, but it will be a fair trial. That is the mercy we offer that you did not. After the commander was led away, Kim Sue turned from her console. Sir, the Concord vessel Luminous Resolve has just entered the system. They are hailing us, and they are, requesting a full explanation. Li allowed himself a small, tired smile. Right on time. Put them through. The screen filled with the image of a Delphian captain, its sleek, silvery head tendrils quivering with apparent agitation. Commander Li of the Kuan Yin, this is Captain Irix of the Concord peacekeeping vessel Luminous Resolve. We have received your initial communique, and we see the situation. Please explain your actions and your current status. We show a disabled Cathari Marauder vessel in significant planetary disruption. Captain Irix, Li began, his voice formal but firm. We responded to a Priority 1 distress call from the Vile Hegemony. The Cathari were engaged in active species-side. Concord response time was 7 days. We invoked the Deathworlder prerogative, Clause 7, to prevent an imminent atrocity. We engaged the Cathari ground forces to rescue survivors and engaged their cruiser to neutralize the threat. The Cathari cruiser is disabled. Its surviving crew surrendered. Cathari ground forces have been routed. Vel casualties are severe, but we have secured the colony and prevented total loss of life. Medical and stabilization efforts are underway. Captain Irix was silent for a long moment, its tendrils still. The Deathworlder prerogative. That is an obscure provision, Commander. Your interpretation is aggressive. You assaulted a superior warship. We defended a civilian population from slaughter, Li corrected calmly. We used the tools we had to solve the problem before us. The tool was an assault. The intent was mercy. The Val survivors are alive to receive your formal assistance now. Would you like to speak with their ambassador? Before Irix could answer, Lee gestured to Kim. A moment later, Tev's face appeared on a split screen, transmitted from the surface. The ambassador looked exhausted, but composed. "Captain Irix," Tev said, their chime-like voice clear. "The humans arrived when all hope was lost. They fought the terror in our home. They pulled our children from the rubble. They did not come for conquest or resources. They came because we cried for help." Tev's large, luminous eyes looked straight at the Concord captain. "You would have brought us justice in a week. They brought us life today. Do not question their methods. Thank their timing." The Delphian captain was visibly taken aback. The moral calculus of the Concord proportional response, diplomatic weight, procedural correctness, had no answer for this raw testimony. "I see," Captain Irix finally said. "We will dispatch humanitarian aid shuttles immediately. We will also take the Cathari prisoners into our custody for trial. Your intervention will be noted in our full report." "Thank you, Captain," Lee said. "The Kuan Yin will stand by to assist with the transition." The channel closed. Kim Soo let out a long sigh. "They're not happy, sir." "They don't need to be happy," Lee said, looking at the planet below. "They just need to do their jobs now. And maybe think a little harder next time someone calls for help." A standard week later, the Concord had established a full relief operation. The Kuan Yin was preparing to depart, its mission over. In the main hangar bay, Ambassador Tev stood before Lee Jun, Park Dae, Kim Soo, and Choi Yoon. "We will not forget," Tev said, placing a delicate, six-fingered hand over their heart in a vowel gesture of eternal debt. "You have rewritten our songs. They will no longer be songs of loss, but of the strange, strong ones who came from the hard world when the gentle ones hesitated." Park Dae gave a short nod. Kim Soo smiled. Choi Yoon just looked impatient to get back to her ship. Lee bowed his head slightly. "You called. We answered. That is all. Your people are safe. That is what matters." As the humans turned to board their ship, Tev spoke again, a question that had burned in their mind for days. "Commander Lee, this Deathworlder prerogative, will you use it again?" Lee paused at the ramp. He looked back, not at Tev, but at the stars visible through the open bay doors. "It is not a weapon we choose to use. It is a promise we are forced to keep. It is for when the galaxy offers a committee and a victim needs a shield." He met Tev's gaze. "We hope we never have to invoke it again. But if the call is true, and the cause is just yes, we will answer again. The same way." The Kuan Yin departed, a sturdy, unglamorous ship melting into the starfield. On the bridge, the crew was quiet, exhausted. They had broken protocols, damaged their ship, and angered bureaucrats. "Do you think it was worth it?" Kim Soo asked, finally putting words to the thought they all shared. On the main view screen, the image of Paxson 3, whole and peaceful once more, shrank to a blue dot. Lee Jun watched it until it was lost in the field of a million other stars, each one potentially hiding another cry, another plea. "They're alive, Kim?" he said simply. "So yes, every time." The ship jumped faster than light speed, heading home. They had not brought the galaxy peace. They had not changed its politics. But in one small, dark corner of it, they had been the answer to a single desperate call for mercy. And for a species from a death world, that was the only kind of victory that ever truly mattered.